we have to start with the big breaking news. And this has come directly from the New York Times and The Athletic, that Chelsea Football Club's ownership is in crisis, and why Clearlake and Todd Boehly's marriage, the heart of Chelsea, this is your ownership, is at breaking point. We're going to delve into this in more details, and it does go on to say in their article, here's a snippet from it, sorry, I clicked on the wrong button, that it's in tatters. Boehly's approach is to hire experts and let them get on with it, whilst Clearlake, particularly Boehly, have taken a role in considered by Boehly as micromanaging. A source close to Boehly's side describes Boehly as being obsessed with player trading. On top of that, Sam Matterface has come out and stated that having been at the ground, he's noticed when he's in the tunnel that Boehly is quite high with energy. He will storm up and down the tunnel. He'll even get involved. And he will go past. And sometimes he'll even go into the dressing room. And I think this speaks to all those conversations that happened a year or so ago about the owners being in the dressing room and maybe picking teams. There are polls that are currently running on big Chelsea creators pages like Simon Phillips, asking which side of this argument Chelsea fans go with. I want to go to Have Hope first on this. The club's trying to progress. The club is trying to move forward after a couple of really barren years. No league title in the better part of a decade now. And the more that comes out of this story, you're really seeing sort of your owners and the people running your club pulling in opposite directions and now fighting this out publicly. What's your views and takes on this, my friend?
No, look, I think I'm not surprised. I mean, any Chelsea fan who is surprised, you're living in La La Land, because everyone knew that. Why is a club that speaks fluent UCL trying to build a glorified orphanage? That's what Chelsea were doing. Like in the last few years, they were trying to just build a glorified orphanage. I was like, this is literally DiCaprio FC. You're just getting youngsters off the streets and just put them into this damn squad. So now when you look at this news now break, of course it makes sense that Todd Boehly, aka Todd B, is trying to build like... I knew you'd do that. I knew that. I walked into that. So basically, Todd Boehly, he's trying to basically build like superstars, spend money. So this whole thing of buying these youngsters, flipping them for a profit, Ponzi scheme, guys who are 19 and under, that's Clearlake. Look at the history. Boehly and Clearlake, they don't have any sporting history. Hate Todd Boehly all you want. He has history with the Dodgers. He has history with the LA Sparks. Look at Boehly's, they're a private equity firm. They are banking merchants. So a bunch of banking merchants now giving full control over Chelsea. That's disastrous. So my thing is, now Todd Boehly says that he can find $2 billion under the pillow. Fine. But it's like, if he finds that $2 billion, I think these guys can find 3 or 4 because you're not dealing with a whole freaking consortium. But it's a mess. It's a complete mess. And like any Chelsea fan who tries to say that, oh, no, people are overbearing, why are people trying to make too much out of it? You're a clown. This is bad because you have a situation where the people are, the worst thing to have, you can hate all your owners in the world, but the worst thing to have is when your ownership are pulling in 2 different directions. So if I'm a player or I'm a manager, I'm like, huh? But now, you see, with this happening, I'm now connecting all of the pieces. So when Pochettino came in charge, he was like, this is Chelsea, we're about winning, and Chelsea are always been top. Then with each other press conference, he was changing his tune. I was like, wait. Why are you contradicting yourself? You said one thing at the start, now you're contradicting yourself. But now, Pochettino was obviously told one thing initially. Then as this relationship deteriorated, he was hearing one thing from one guy, one thing from another guy. And what Pochettino found was that, it's really Boehly that's really running things. Him and his consortium actually have 60% of the ownership. So even if I thought that Boehly was the guy that I thought was the direction that was going with, it's really Boehly who has a greater ownership. So the situation has to happen where who are fully the owners. These guys can't work together. It's obvious. Because you can obviously see that it's schizophrenia. It's schizophrenia FC. Because it's like you're buying these top stars for money, then you're buying these unknown stars. It doesn't make any sense. So, like, I would, if I had to choose, if you pointed a nuclear warhead to my head and I had to choose between Boehly and Clearlake, I'm choosing Boehly. because he has a sporting background. I'm not leaving the responsibility of Chelsea to guys that have zero experience with regards to sports. The Glazers owned the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in '95. FSG, we know of their sporting history. Cronkies, the Denver Nuggets, and I think is it the Rams? I believe that with these Claire Ocean dudes, they're the only owners that have zero experience in owning a sporting franchise. Every other Premier League team, their owners have a history of owning a sporting franchise or an institution. These are the only guys that don't. So, like, look, it's bad. It's bad. Like, it's not good. But again, if I had to choose, yeah. But if it's between now, he's not going to come back. But I'm still rooting for Bram. But it is what it is. Putin tax. But the thing is that if the Sophie's choice is Boehly or Clearlake, Boehly.
A lot of Chelsea fans online seem to be siding that way as more news is coming out, if that makes sense, because it sounds now, and I feel yesterday got asked a question, who's leaking all of this? And I think it's both parties are leaking it. This is how it appears to me, and I don't want to throw this out to the panel. It feels to me as though Todd Boehly has got to a stage where he said enough is enough. We've all pumped money in. Yes, you own more, but we're not operating in the right way. I think our model is broken. I don't think we can become successful. And maybe after not landing Osimhen, and I know that Obi Mikel today has come out and said they were really close. It just wasn't enough time. But that's because they were lowballing for too long. If they'd have got to that better offer sooner, he would have been a player. It feels to me like Todd Boehly is kind of pushing out this news because essentially, although both sides are saying they don't want to sell, they're both briefing saying they don't want to sell. Of course, Clearlake are in a position of power because they're the majority shareholder, and you would expect that within the shareholder agreements, they have more control and power and say, and they might be able to force people out. However, I think what Boehly's doing is trying to show Chelsea fans that I have your interest and better interest at heart. Because if the fan base side with Boehly, it does make it very hard for Clearlake to continue because people know, people are not buying into what it is that they are doing. So, look, it isn't a great situation whatsoever. I understand exactly where you're coming from and why you're frustrated. From your point of view, Rack, looking at this, do you think it's going to have an impact on what we see on the pitch over the coming months with the heart of the football club? And we all now know how important the people that run your football club are. I think it's become so paramount and sort of obvious and protruding in the last decade. How badly do you think this could impact Chelsea Football Club overall?
Look, there's two sides of it. There's the direct side where you've got uncertainty in the boardroom filtering down to the players because there's not many layers between the playing staff and the top level management, and then indirectly through the fans. And the more this story gets blown up, the more rumors will start coming out, the more uncertainty there is. Inevitably, I think it's fair enough to say. I mean, Chelsea have got eyeballs on them already, considering how much money they've spent over the last few years. They're in a difficult situation already. The start has been okay. I think won one, drawn one, lost one. Could be better, could be worse. But all of a sudden, if on the pitch starts going a bit pear-shaped as well, a bit more, then I don't know how far we are off crisis. Look, maybe I'm being a bit overly dramatic about it and looking at as a rival kind of worst case scenario. And I also find it quite funny, to be fair. But at the same time, I think Chelsea fans have a right to be a little bit worried because Tel, you've said it before many times. You don't want to wash your dirty linen in public, and this is what's happening on the biggest scale. This is not just a football story, like you said. New York Times, Bloomberg, some of the biggest financial publications in the world are covering this story now because it's a global thing. These are big hitters, not just in Europe, not just in English football, but globally in the finance world. So it could, if it doesn't get resolved pretty quickly, because the worst thing you can have is if this drags on. Say it drags on like past January into next season, all that kind of stuff. Players coming in, players going out. What's going to happen? That uncertainty is not good at any level.
Well, it's certainly not, and you're right. I mean, who's going to win? I mean, they're offering people contracts in January, but what if that's an Boehly signing or Clearlake's approach? But then Todd Boehly wins. What does that mean for those players in the last window or two that have been signed under this. And I don't think it matters to a great deal who wins the battle per se. I think there's merit in both their approaches. But it's until you get to that resolution, the problems could persist, Griggs. I mean, a lot of Chelsea fans are angry this is even being discussed. The abuse I've had in the last few days of talking about this subject has been like nothing else I've ever experienced in the social media world. But do you think Chelsea fans should be concerned, frustrated, and demanding a quick resolution to this situation? You're on mute, bro. Just to let you know.
Mute.
My bad. I was trying to say, you don't want both your owners to be like in a battle, stuff like that. I feel bad for Todd Boehly personally because he kind of got made the face of this project early on because he was like the first name really involved with the new ownership group and stuff like that, and they made him the face. So all of these bad signings, right, for the past couple of years, the 1.5 billion, like Hope mentioned, the orphanage, all these 18-year-olds, they all blamed him. And then I always like kind of went with that kind of pattern, but then I realized because you mentioned his other sporting franchises like the Dodgers, the Lakers, and the Sparks. When you compare the process at those clubs or teams and the way that they approach free agency and stuff like that, it's always been the stars. Obviously, LA is the city of angels. The stars, all the stars go there. You look at the LeBrons. You look at the Dodgers. They just spent $700 million on Shohei Ohtani, the best baseball player in the world. They had no problem forking out that kind of money. And then you look at Chelsea this summer. You look at Osimhen. They don't want to pay his wages. Olise. They don't want to pay up the wages for those kind of players, but they have no problem dishing out the 50 mil for Estevao or Kenji Paez, who are still 16, 17 years old. And then we listen to the quotes they pulled up. Like Boehly, he kind of feels like the guy at PSG, Nasser El Khelaïfi, the guy that like the way he storms into the micromanaging. And for me, that's a bad thing for McBoehly, the micromanaging. And I feel bad for Todd Boehly. And I respect him for kind of coming out and not kind of saying, this is not this is not my approach. This guy, you guys made me the face of a project that's failed, and I'm not the face. It's this guy. He's the one. And I remember hearing from a couple of people I know that like are close to Chelsea. They said that Todd Boehly was never really. They're pointing the finger at the wrong guy. He got, and I guess maybe because he's like the American and stuff like that. And I like Terry probably mentioned and Have Hope. The previous American owners have a bad rep in Premier League football, rightfully so, like the Glazers and stuff like that. And Todd Boehly got involved with them, but when you compare what he's done, other than maybe FSG, because the Red Boston sports have been successful, Todd Boehly is a successful guy. The Dodgers have been one of the best baseball teams in the past decade. The Lakers are still the Lakers. The Sparks, I think, had a good time as well with like some players. So I feel bad for him, and I think for the Chelsea, like we mentioned, how can it affect the footballing team? This is not a Chelsea team that has leaders that can kind of that can kind of steady the ship in this crisis. Because if you look at that team, the captain is Enzo Fernandez, who was involved in a scandal this past summer. You have Reece James, who's never on the pitch. You have Ben Chilwell, who's another vice captain, and he's isolated from the squad. So who's going to be the guy on that pitch to kind of, with all the noise around them, can steady the troops and be like, ignore the outside noise. Let's just focus on doing that. And they don't even have a coach. They don't even have like a coach, like at least during the Roman thing, right? Thomas Tuchel was in charge, and he's an experienced guy. So he was able to kind of take the brunt of it and leave the focus off the squad. You have a championship manager who has never been in this type of situation before. Half a year, 18 months ago, this guy was laying out the cones for Pep Guardiola. He's only
and also, so even add to that as well, this guy was in the Serie B with a geriatric Buffon with Parma. The guy's resume stinks, but we know why he was hired. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I think it could get bad for Chelsea if it goes for a long period, but who knows? Like you mentioned, Boehly and Clearlake have a lot of power because they own a lot of the percentage, so they probably could raise a lot quicker money than Todd Boehly can.
Yeah, Giuseppe, the Clearlake definitely have more money. They've got more of a majority, so they don't even have to raise as much money as Boehly would have to do. But what do you think, looking at this, reading what you've done as a rival, what do you think is best for Chelsea from this point? Because when we're asking the question, will it impact them on the football pitch? I think the answer is it already has over the last 2 years. Knowing what we now know, and this is the thing with, I always say this, but hindsight is lucrative. We now maybe know why they haven't been successful in the last 2 years, because you literally have the people running your club fighting and arguing. You have the lead face from Clearlake in and out of the dressing room all the time. I don't know what he's quite doing in the dressing room, but what do you think is going to be best for Chelsea from this point? What should